Hi, welcome to P32's workshop. My name is Jim Gary, and today's video shows how I installed a Safety Plus steering dampener or controller into my 25-year-old P32 Workhorse-based Class A motorhome, which is a year 2000 Georgie Boy Pursuit. This is an ongoing project that I've been documenting on this channel, and the description below includes links to an overview of the project and links to specific tasks, mostly involving the front and rear suspension. So let's get on with the video. This is the original steering stabilizer, and it's obsolete. I'm going to replace it with something new that doesn't even fit here. So while I'm at it in here, I'm just going to go ahead and take that apart. Now this looks like it's got two lock nuts. I think really all I need to do is take this nut off because I can just lift the whole thing out. Okay, so that is a 3/4 inch. There it goes. I'm on the right-hand side, and there's only one of these steering dampers that's on the right-hand side. There we go. So that comes off. I'll have to crawl up there. I'll get the bolt on the other side. Yeah, I got some PB Blaster on it. Okay, 9/60. Let's see. That's the magic one. There it goes. I just realized I can get my impact driver in there. That was easier. So that's an unnecessary piece of gear I didn't need. Like I say, the other one goes on very differently. Here's this new steering control, the one by Safety Plus. And I took the old one out and just put it up next to it just for comparison. And that's the yellow one here. And it's actually made by Monroe, which is the same brand as the shocks that were in it. So I think these were the original ones that were there. And unlike the old shocks, this thing actually does have some resistance when you pull it apart and when you push it back together. So it's still working, but the new one attaches in a different way and is supposedly far superior in dampening steering movements. This is the steering control built by Safety Plus. And this is something that's been around for a long time, especially for older RVs. And they come specific for your motorhome chassis. And I have a P32 motorhome chassis on my Georgie Boy Pursuit motorhome. It looks kind of like a shock absorber, but what it does is it helps dampen the steering wheel. So if the truck goes by, it doesn't kind of pull you off the road or push you off the road as much. It makes your steering less prone to sudden changes. They've been putting these on for years. It's a product that's been around for a long time, and it goes in a completely different way. It looks kind of like a shock absorber, but it runs parallel with the RV. This one actually is attached crossways under the RV. So what happens is there's this bracket here, and this bolts onto the chassis here, and then there's this bolt and bracket here that kind of clamp this side onto another part of the chassis, and then this is where the steering damper or steering control connects in. So I'll kind of show you how everything fits together here. So one of these goes on, and these have a shoulder, these rubber grommets, so the shoulder goes toward the bracket. So this would go on like that, and then the bracket go on, then this one goes in, that shoulder again goes toward the bracket, because the bracket's got a bigger hole that holds there, like that, and then this would go on, and then here's the nut. And once you get that all tightened, you're supposed to make it so that the grommets are each about 1/4 inch thick, or they bulge out past the metal holder. And once that's all on, you put on this lock washer just to lock the nut down after it's tightened. And these U-bolts, they actually connect this end of the arm to the steering control arm. And there's two of them. And it's the position of these where they are exactly on that control arm, the steering control arm, that really makes the difference on how well this tracks. So you've got to make sure you got your wheels straight. And afterwards, you may have to make some adjustments. Now this end goes on kind of similarly. So that you put on the metal washer, you put on the grommet so the shoulder is facing toward the hole it's going to go into. Then you put the other grommet on. And you put on the nut. And then there's a lock nut. And remember, this part here is simply a clamp. So this hole here bolts into the actual frame, and this clamps this end of the bracket onto the frame in another location. And you'll see all that when we take it out to the RV. So this steering stabilizer mount goes up in here. So I got to take that bolt there out and slip this on and put the bolt back on. I think that's a 3/4 inch bolt. Interesting enough, this bolt here, the other side, goes on the other side of the frame there, goes through the frame that attaches to this cross piece here. It's an angled piece. I don't think you can see. I guess you can kind of see where my hand's moving along it. And then it bolts onto the chassis or frame right in the middle. There's one on the other side as well. So it said to remove the washer, but I think I'm going to leave that washer unless there's not room for it. And it's going to attach down here, up here, to this thing right here. So that's where it's got, this bolt has to be aligned with that. So I think this has to go on like that. And I think I see why they say to remove that washer, because there is not really enough room. So I'll go ahead and put that there. And I'm just going to put it on there loosely for now until we get everything set up. We can still move things around. Once I get everything in, then I'll tighten it. So the next step is to get this bolt in. There's a spacer that goes on it. So the spacer is really just this big thick washer. And then this bolt just slips through that bracket. Sway bar is attached to the front sway bar mount. This piece of angle steel goes on and clamps it. And then there's a nut for it. And it looks to be a locking nut. So this is a shot from underneath. So here's that bracket from underneath that we just set in there. And this is that bolt. You can see the spacers right here. So then this just goes on like so. And then the nut goes on. And once I get everything tightened up, that'll hold everything on. The steering damper will go through here, this hole, and it will go and connect eventually up to this rod here. This is the steering control arm here. And that's where those two U-bolts will go. I'll go ahead and get everything tightened up and we'll start putting it all back together again. So I am putting a washer on the other side of this bolt under the nut, just in case. So the nut on the back is 11/16 and the nut on the front is 5/8. So I'll put the 5/8 on the front and I'll tighten up the back. Then I'll tighten up the other big nut. No room to get my electric driver in here. It didn't give any torque settings. So I'm just gonna snug it down pretty tight. Then I'll tighten up the other nut bolt. That's pretty tight. That means the bracket's good and tight, and it sure feels tight, so I don't think it's going anywhere. I'm ready to tighten this up. Make sure those shoulders go in the hole. So I'm just going to tighten up this to get the bushings the right way. I'm going to make sure the shoulders set in right. So it kind of looks okay. Now I've just got to get it down to where the rubber bulges past the metal, or the rubber is 1/4 of an inch thick. I would call that about right. Now it said when you put these washers on, the lock washers, to put the flat end down, they're kind of weird lock washers. They're kind of hollow. Let's take this a little bit tighter. There. Okay, so I think that's on there good. I've already got the one bushing on it. I think I got you a view now where you can see the control arm for the steering is right along here. And those two U-bolts are going to connect in the middle of this, right about here to here. And it said to make sure those are clean. And I'm going to run up and see if the steering wheel's straight. I don't have my wheels on, so it's kind of hard to tell for sure. But it looks to me like they're canted a little bit to the left, so I'm going to go in and move them just a titch. I'm getting ready to put the steering stabilizer in the bracket. It's going to go in here. It's mostly assembled. I've already got the inner metal ring. I've got inner bushing. So I'm just going to set it up behind here. Run it in there. And then I'm going to put this bushing in. Again, the shoulder goes first, because that's got to go in that big hole in the bracket. Then the second metal washer goes on. Then the nut. I've just got to lift up the steering damper a little bit. So now it's just a matter of tightening this. Making sure those shoulders fit into the holes. Bulges out past the washer or until it's a 1/4 of an inch thick. It's a fine thread, so it takes a while. Okay, I think that's about right. So now I'm going to move the camera so I can show you where the eye bolts or U-bolts are going. So here goes the first U-bolt. You know, I'm in Florida and it's May and it's starting to get warm. It's been hitting the mid to high 80s every day. It's still down around 70 when we get up in the morning, but it's definitely starting to hit the summer weather. And I was reminded of that because I'm laying down here, and I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I'm hearing an ice cream truck go by. I kind of live in a semi-rural area, but we do get ice cream trucks out here. There we go. So I've got a deep well socket, so I should be able to get these on. I think these are Loctite or locking nuts. They're not nylocks, but I'm going to have to go through all this front end rear suspension and check all the grease fittings. I'm sure it hasn't been greased in a long time. I've got 2 impact drivers. This is my little Ryobi one. I've had it for a long time, but it's kind of old-fashioned because it's a lot deeper. The newer ones are a lot shorter, so you can get them into more places. And then I got the great big one I use for wheels and big suspension pieces, but this will be okay for now. Back to the hand tightening. Make sure they're good and snug. You can't really tell with an impact driver how tight you're making it. Oh, that's pretty tight. Yep, pretty tight. Pretty tight. Okay, I think that's good. Just trying to see if there's any clearance issues. I don't think so. Well, I hope this video was useful for you. And again, related videos on my motorhome restoration are linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and please think about subscribing. Bye.